All right. Well, this is a game that I started playing back in the 70s. It was called Dungeon and Dragons back then, and it was a great game for people who played it. It was controversial for everybody who didn't. Um, this is the video game version in modern days. Let's watch this intro and we'll talk a little bit more on the other side.
To brace yourselves for this. Well, that didn't go so badly.
Get his attention. Cleric, with me.
The light of Salune will cleanse away the wicked.
Rise, my children. Rise and feed upon the living.
All right, so that's pretty much what this is about. It's a game. It's a fantasy game. It's Dungeons and Dragons. It's what when I was a little kid, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, what I imagined while I played the Atari 2600, what video games could be someday and how Dungeons and Dragons could be applied to it. This game, Neverwinter, I really did start playing a very long time ago. It's come up, well, there was a number of versions of it. You'll see many of the names from games that I'll be mentioning here shortly. As I'm talking, I'm creating this character. He is just a big hack and slash, big brutal fighter guy. Um, they're pretty easy to learn, and they're really fun to play with. Um, this is a particularly good role. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how I'm putting the character together. Please explore all the options. This game is amazing with all the different varieties. I just did the very simple thing where I just got a cut and paste character. You can go in, as you'll see here in a minute, and alter everything. Length of hands, feet, nose. It's insane. Getting back to what I was saying, I started playing this video game version of Dungeons and Dragons quite a long time ago. Back, I believe it was in the 90s. Baldur's Gate. I'm trying to think. I think there was one before that. But Baldur's Gate 2, Throne of Ball, Neverwinter Nights Diamond Edition, which I really loved. I played that almost obsessively for a very long time. And it's very similar to this. The graphics on this is much better, but the gameplay is very, very, very close. And so, when I ran into this on the PS4, it was like running into an old friend in a place that you never expected to see anybody that you would ever recognize. I've tried to turn my kids onto Dungeons and Dragons. I, of course, have all of my original books from the first editions. Even the original first edition that was recalled. What was it called? Deities and Demigods. The purple one with the. It's all about the mythos that you can employ in Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I happen to have been lucky enough. It was the very first Dungeons and Dragons purchase I ever made, and I bought it in Modesto. I recall that. I don't remember where. It was some game store. It was in a back corner where Dungeons and Dragons was kept, and it was the only book that my friend Jeff didn't have. Jeff is the gentleman who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons, a buddy of mine, my best friend growing up in grammar school. In junior high, late junior high, he and I started hanging out. I don't know, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and he had a friend that turned him on to Dungeons and Dragons, and he showed myself, our buddy Mark, another couple of guys named Mike as well. And it turned out there were some other kids in the school that were playing as. Anyway, there was a small group of us nerds that suddenly found each other, and Jeff had all the books. He had the player's manual, he had the Dungeon Master's Guide, and he had the Monster Manual. And God, who didn't want those? So, what I did is when I looked, I saw all those books. And I also saw one he didn't have, and it was his Deities and Demigods. And I picked it up. I started flipping through it. I'm like, this is pretty cool. It's got Greek mythos. It's got Egyptian hieroglyphics. It was crazy. And it had some really strange-looking things. Something called the Cult of Cthulhu, which I'd never heard of. And it had King Arthur, which I thought was pretty cool. Because, everybody's heard of King Arthur and Merlin and Sir Lancelot. So I purchased this with my own money. I don't know how much I paid, $12, $13 back in like 70 something. It turns out that particular book. Now, of course, I have all those books, and I have the next second editions and third editions, next generations, pardon me, as it went on. I think I stopped collecting the books around third generation. I'm not sure if there were any after that. I think it kind of went more board game. Anyway, off topic. Very neat thing about purchasing this particular book was, because of the Cult of Cthulhu, the book was recalled. Apparently the authors, Gary Gygax or whoever was involved with this particular version of Deities and Demigods, the very first one, had not acquired the copyrights permission to include it, and so all these books were apparently recalled. They rewrote it and put it back out, And it not only didn't have the cult of Cthulhu at that point, but it no longer had the Arthurian mythos, because King Arthur, Holy Grail, it's very Christian based, and Christianity wasn't one of the mythos in the deities and demigods. So those are two really big differences. So apparently I've got kind of a more rare version of this book, and it's kind of a neat little thing to have.
Hey, are you all right?
Here we are. This is the beginning of it.
Move around with the left stick.
Basically, right now it's just learning the mechanics of the game. The lore, I will open these all up. It just kind of tells you about what's going on. The little bit of history, you can read about it in the character thing here. I'll be opening it up later when it's a little bit more important. Right now, when you're playing the game,
Move to Private Wilfred. Press X when close to talk to him.
yeah, you basically just follow those little sparkly paths.
When I saw the Draculich attack the ship, I was afraid there would be no survivors. What brings you to Neverwinter in such troubled times?
So I don't know if any of these answers actually affect the game in any way. However, I am seeking adventure and riches.
Adventure I can guarantee. Riches is up to you. As you may have noticed, Neverwinter is under attack. The necromancer Valindra is assaulting the city with her undead legions. Plenty of opportunities for an aspiring adventurer to make a fortune. Search the wreckage along the shore for your gear. It's dangerous to go unarmed right now. When you finish, head up to the camp at the top of the hill. They've got a nice warm fire up there. You'll feel better once you've dried out.
So,
The quest path leads to your next objective. The path can be toggled from the mission journal found in the main menu.
the Dungeons and Dragons is a story-based game. It is the basis for all role-playing
Press
games.
X to interact with nearby characters and objects. Select between multiple objects by centering your crosshair cursor over the desired object.
I look back on my youth being made fun of and bullied by some kids that I grew up with that were kind of more of the
Press L1 and
jock
button to open your
mentality.
inventory. Select an item to equip it.
Not that I wasn't a jock. I was very good at track and everything else. It's just they're always those kids you don't get along with. Well, I think I personally don't play fantasy football, but I have a small chuckle in my head knowing that they play fantasy football, and it is absolutely no different than Dungeons and Dragons, and it doesn't exist or only exists.
Toggle
Pardon me.
between HUD elements.
It only exists because of Dungeons and Dragons and people.
Quest tracker displays current quest objectives.
Anyway, this is the very intro to the game. It's just a lot of dialogue until we get into it. Obviously, there is this overarching storyline that there's this enemy that we are all kind of fighting against, this Valindra or whatever her name was. And it's just like when I was playing when I was a kid. There was an overarching enemy, somebody who was attacking the township, whatever. But in the midst of trying to get to that end goal of defeating, whatever it is, the dragon,
Campfires or rest zones where out-of-combat players may heal.
the lich, or whatever it is, or it could be just another, a human enemy that happens just to be a horribly evil person. Before you ever get to that, there are 1,000 little quests that get you to it, and that's where Dungeons and Dragons really shines. If you want to play a one-night quest, that's great. I mean, anybody can do that. A single campaign, it rocks. Let's listen to this
It's good
guy
to
here.
see someone survive the attack on the ship. When you feel ready, please speak to me again. I'm afraid I'll need your help.
So we just completed that quest. We got some
Although
stuff.
we stopped Valindra's main force, the battle is far from over. The battlefield is crawling with mindless undead who lost their masters in the fighting. To make matters worse, the enemy is raising our dead to use against us. Acolyte Naaman is performing a ritual of Kelimvor to lay the newly dead to rest. That is sure to draw an attack here. I must stay and make sure Naaman finishes her ritual. Could you search the battlefield for any wounded we missed and send them here? After you finish with the wounded, go to Del McCourt's camp and tell him our situation.
Alright, so we're going to go around and slaughter undead guys and heal not dead guys. Anyway, that's where Dungeons and Dragons really shines, is in almost the mini quests.
Sure strike, damaging all foes in front of you.
The overarching story is what keeps you coming
Fire your
back.
reticule over objects and enemies to target them.
I wish this guy would stop talking. So, having that ultimate goal, we're going to go defeat the Hydra. We've got to make it out to the island and rescue the maiden and then defeat the evil island king. Whatever the overarching goal is, it's all those little things that get you there. Those are your nightly plays. Maybe tonight it's simply about securing a vessel to get from our shoreline to an island and everything that's involved with it. It could be, you know, we're going to a tavern and there's all sorts of, we need to meet some guy and he's kind of shady and God knows what can happen with that. Or maybe we want to steal it and we have to talk to a thief if we don't have one in our party. But that's where the adventure lies. And it's really hard to get into a single night campaign. Hey, there's just 4 of us, let's play just one. We're just gonna do a big old, you know, attack on this keep that people have been hearing howling sounds from. And we go in there and eventually find maybe the whole thing's been led by a werewolf or something. Well, that's a fine quest, and it's a lot of fun, and it's great for a group of strangers that get together for a one-time play. But ultimately, the game shines when you have a group of friends that meet, and not even necessarily regularly, but just meet, you plan it, and it's an event. It used to be a weekend thing for us. We'd all get together. We get our Dungeons and Dragons stuff together, get all of the snacks and supplies we're going to need, because we are going to be sitting at a table and playing, and in between playing, you know, we're going to be eating, and we're going to be playing with M80s and blowing up models of, you know, 747s that Jeff built, or swinging on the rope swing into the pond out his house. You know, it wasn't just a bunch of nerds sitting at a table all weekend. But man, when that sun went down, Jeff had his Sprite cracked open. He was a great DM. Anyway, those are the stupid little things that make Dungeons and Dragons great to us old school Dungeons and Dragons guys. And we played it a lot like you guys are playing it now, where you could kind of do whatever you wanted. See, we weren't in the city, we were in a small town, and we were the only group of people that we knew of that played this game. Back in the day, there were TV shows like Donahue and stuff like that were doing shows on Dungeons and Dragons, proclaiming debating about whether or not it lures people into Satanism and things like that. I can remember my mom yelling at me about Satan worship and whatnot in Dungeons and Dragons while I was an altar boy going to church on Sundays. It's ridiculous. It is a game. Anyway, I kind of talked over this fella. These are really just early quests. We're going to be going and gathering arrows now, or meeting somebody else somewhere else and doing more battle. It's until we
strike for extra damage.
Yeah, we're learning the mechanics of the game at this point. This is kind of easy, tedious part, but get past it. This is, I think, the part that causes a lot of people to get turned off from this game, because they walk into the first time, they're all, great, a free game, and it's kind of a third-person shooter, medieval times. Let's see what it's all about. And oh my God, look at all the reading. This is ridiculous. Listen to all the dialogue. That's crazy. And then you're hitting these guys, and they go down. It's like every single zombie has a glass jaw. Well, it's just the intro. Once we get past this bridge up ahead of us, we're going to be entering the actual world of Neverwinter. Not that we aren't in it now. This is a portion of it. This, as I say, is just a training portion. And it is vast. And as I touched upon earlier, I have the video games, Baldur's Gate and whatnot. And those games, Baldur's Gate is a city within Neverwinter. Shadows of Aman. Aman is a town. It's all the stuff that I'd been playing in video games and just being so thrilled back in the 90s on Windows 95 and playing on my computer. That, you know, finally, all these great dreams of when I was a kid reading the books and trying to draw the dungeons out on graph paper. And finally, there was a video game that was something close. Something close. Now, Baldur's Gate, back in the day, wasn't nearly as good as what we're seeing here. In fact, it wasn't even as good as Windows 95, like back in the day, Doom. And there was part of me that was like, I wish they could have just come up with something like Doom and made it kind of Dungeons and Dragons like. Just switch the weapon types and enemy types and things like that. But it didn't really happen. You know, there are games like that. But this one has always, when I played it as Neverwinter Nights Diamond Edition, I loved it. In fact, before getting this PS4, I had just found my old CD, and I was about to go online to see if maybe there were some servers or some way to get that going again, because it really was a fun game. So what is the reasons that I'm actually doing this? I'm doing this because I love the game. And like I said, I've tried to introduce it to my kids, and they do enjoy it for little bits of time that they've played it. But, you know, they live with their mom. I live on a ranch quite a ways from them. It's not the most easy thing for us ever to get together, that kind of thing, as far as being able to sit down and play a lengthy game like this. But now that we can do it online together, my son, you know, my daughter finally got this uploaded onto their PS4. And then my son emailed me and said, you know, hey Dad, what the heck is Neverwinter Nights? So I explained it. He loves Destiny. Destiny 1, Destiny 2. I explained to him that it's a lot like Destiny. That you've got a character that you're trying to improve by going on different missions. And there are places and people that you communicate with to get information. And there's a story. And I explained to him that it's not a first-person shooter. It's a third-person shooter, and he's not necessarily used to that.
Excellent. Please place the arrows in one of the barrels near the archers.
He, I don't believe, has ever played Red Dead Redemption, which is a great third-person shooter. But he plays Destiny. He plays. Now he's playing Star Wars Battlefront 2, which we'll eventually do some videos on as well. But he was asking me about this, and it was really hard, so I typed. I was like, how can I explain this to him? So I kind of wanted to type it to him in an email, and when I started typing it, it was,
The Red Wizards haven't been
how do
driven
you
away, but
say everything that I've just
keep
said
their heads down.
for the last 20 minutes or so in an email? Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like
More
kissing.
undead are attacking Neverwinter. They're boiling out of
It's one of those
Castle
things you
Never
just
and
do.
storming the sleeping dragon
You can
bridge.
talk about it, you can try to
If the
describe
bridge
it,
falls, they will enter the heart of the city.
but until
Protect
you're
his enclave.
doing it, you don't know
I must
whether
stay and
it's
deal with the
something
Red
you want to do
Wizards.
again.
Please, go to the bridge and aid the defenders. Destroy the undead soldiers near the gate to our north so it may be opened safely. Then talk to Private Wilfred. He will get you inside the city and show you the way to the bridge. Be careful, these undead are more aggressive than others you fought. Tempest grant you strength.
Alright, so that last little bit is really kind of what was most important. These last undead are more powerful than what we've been fighting. Here we're getting into the actual gameplay. It's not nearly as difficult, but when we get into it, there are creatures that are like ginormous, like 5 times bigger than you. It's crazy. It's really exciting what technology has done for nerds like me, who grew up having to imagine all this in our brains, waiting for that one time a year right around Thanksgiving, Halloween. You never knew when it was going to come on, but when The Hobbit would come on the television, the old cartoon, 20 minutes of watching that, and then go back into my bedroom and pour over all my books and look up gnomes and look up red dragons and giant spiders, wood elves, goblins. It was... I remember being young. I mean, I wish you guys in your generation, you younger ones, really would understand how different the world has become in just 20 years, 30 years. In the blink of an eye. When I was a child, I had video games. I had a dirt bike. I had horses and I had guns for hunting, and I had friends and we had telephones and everything else, and we water skied and all that.
Hello again.
But I also,
You're looking a good deal fiercer than when you washed up on the beach.
but I would also be that nerdy kid that would take and find that wooden stake on the property that looked kind of shaped like a sword, and go out and just pretend, imagining that I was wandering in some medieval, briar or something like that. And it was actually just a creek at the end of my pasture, and I was walking around with a stick in my hand.
Select a location to travel to it.
I don't know that kids do that anymore. And I wonder if video games like this have taken that little ability. That singular innocence to be able to pick up a stick and spend hours with it out in the yard, battling dragons that were nothing more than
They're in trouble.
shrubs.
We must go to their aid.
It was a different time, and this is a dramatically different
Move it
time.
any direction to sprint away from enemy attacks. Do not sprint when your stamina is low.
So I'm hoping that you guys will watch this and at least consider creating a character and getting up into this point, because this is where it starts getting kind of serious. The enemies, this is the actual gameplay now. This is what you'll be finding more than not. There are all sorts of other great aspects to this game during our Christmas season here, on this side of the video game world. In Neverwinter, they had some festival of, I don't know what it was, some seasonal festival. I don't want to say it's Festival of Light, because I think that was a Destiny thing. But it was very similar to that, I think. The other things, there are fishing derbies. You can competitively fish for rewards and upgrades and perks and whatnot. Does this have a loot crate kind of aspect to it? Like many, I don't know if this is MMO, I'm not really that familiar with MMO and what it really means, but does it have that kind of thing where you can spend real money and make fake money to spend in the game? Yeah, you can. You can buy all sorts of stuff. You could buy weapon packages, I suspect, and whatnot. But one of the things that is neat about it is not necessary. Unless, the only thing I would consider personally is this game only comes with 2 character slots. And you can purchase extra character slots. So, you know, I wouldn't have to just be one of two fighters, or a fighter and a wizard. I could be a fighter, a wizard, a rogue. You know, I could be one of each character. But it's just a matter of purchasing an extra character slot, and I think that's kind of reasonable. This is a pretty nifty game.
Square to use spinning strike, dealing damage to all enemies in melee range.
And it cannot possibly be cheap, let alone free to develop. And that's a nice attack. I like that.
Action points are full.
Yeah, people got to get paid to produce stuff like this and keep it upgraded and everything going. So I have absolutely no problem with that. I know that everybody's up in arms about loot crates and Battlefield 2, Star Wars Battlefield 2, and I've heard some stuff about Destiny and the silver or whatever it is. I don't purchase the stuff, so it doesn't affect me. I just play the game and enjoy it. If it's something where I cannot proceed through the game without making additional purchases, then that's ridiculous. It's not the same as a game expansion. That's like saying you have to buy this piece of armor and it costs $15 real, or you can't conquer this guy, and you have to conquer this guy to get to the end of the game or whatever. It's that kind of nonsense that, yeah, I think is out of the line as far as loot crates go. But as far as this game goes, no, it's pretty much you just you get in there, you grind it out, and you get rewarded for your experience and for what you do. And you choose what you do. Like this idiot just ran in on a lich. A good move. Like I was saying, here we go. Like really big enemies. This is one of them. He's not the biggest. Nowhere even near it. Here we go. I wonder if I can use that cool new spin, or did I already use too much energy or something? So, you notice I got this cool little sprint thing I can do. Wizards get that too. I think it's because I don't have a shield. I've got another character that I play, and he has a shield, but he can't sprint. So I think that might be what the exchange rate is, as far as that goes. This particular character type, whatever he is, a great sword warrior. But with this enemy, you can see, and with all the enemies, you can kind of see where their attack radius is. And if you're in it, this is just where he can hit you. But there he is. He's about to do a special attack, and you can sprint out of the way of that and avoid it. It's how you can survive these type of battles. With an enemy, it's just like way overpowered if you weren't like that. See, he's just knocked it right out. So I need to get out of it. But I've got him. He's almost down. Nice. I think it doesn't do a lot of damage. You think? Oh, I guess it did do a lot of damage. Just takes a long time for him to fall. Alright, so all these little glowy things are loot. And that means I gotta talk to this guy.
Should have been more cautious. But when I thought of all my friends who died because of her, find Sergeant Knox and tell him what happened. Ask him to check on my mother from time to time. You have to stop her. Lord Neverember is no saint.
I think he's gonna die.
But he's better than the alternative. If Neverember fails here, Valindra will rule Neverwinter. Find Sergeant Knox. He's one of Neverember's guards. One of the good ones. You must stop Valindra.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Valindra. So that's the enemy. She's the one. Some sort of lich thing. And, there we go. Alright. We're going to go ahead and continue this in episode 2. And we're going to call this a wrap. Thanks for watching, folks. And as always, Please like, please share, and please subscribe. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.